what we're moving into, and if you want to follow along, I would recommend it, is we're going to get into actually installing the Mongo tools and connecting to a cluster and pinging a Mongo database and creating documents and really just working with Mongo. So we're going to do a little Mongo day here. And so what I would start with is at the end of our presentation yesterday. So here there is a Mongo intro. Um,
Mr. G, you're not sharing your screen.
Classic. Let me fix that. Right. And so at the end of the PowerPoint, um, there are some tools. And down here at MongoDB software. And so, you basically want to download Mongo Community Server. Um, this runs Mongo on your local machine, um, similar to what's called Community Server or Microsoft SQL Server. I think the Express edition is considered the free. Um, and so you can run a Mongo database on your laptop. However, we're not going to do a whole lot of that, but we're still going to, go to the download page and download this and have it again. I don't want to spend a lot of time working on local databases. I want to work on databases in the cloud. So Mongo Community Server, and this just looks like the current edition 6. Cool with me. Download that package, install, and we'll install that first. Compass then, so Community Server gets the database running on your local machine. Compass is a GUI tool for working with databases, and then Shell is a command line tool. So those are the next two tools. And then Atlas is a your cloud databases. And so this is, instead of working with databases on your local machine, as it says here, this is a cloud hosted version. And so primarily we're going to be working with Atlas, and we'll step through this one step at a time. Again, just installing Community Server just to have it more or less. I do not anticipate doing a whole lot on local Mongo instances. Let me close some of this down, close down, just get this running. Okay, welcome to the setup. Okay, I want a complete Mongo instance run as a network service user, sure, service name MongoDB, install. Now here's a little checkbox for installing Compass as well. That's cool. There was a note that the shell was a separate install, so we get Compass for free now with this installer. So that's one less step. Used to be a separate install. Okay, I had a little window that popped up that I had to agree to. Otherwise, the installer wouldn't finish. Okay, fast forward through the install process and it booted up Compass. Like I said, you get Compass for free. And if I start, notice it is connecting to localhost. And if I connect, it brings us connected into our local instance of Mongo at localhost. It does have some databases already created, um, and we don't really use these. You can kind of see here, this has a single collection called startup log with a single document in it, right? So we've got a database. In the database, you have tables, aka collections, and then inside of those collections, you have documents. Okay, so we're not really going to use this Compass for now, although I will have you pin it. So pin to the taskbar and finish that installer so we can get back to it. And so this little circle icon is the GUI Mongo Compass. We also need the shell. And so if we pop up the link, the shell is called MongoSh or MongoSh, if you will. Download and install MongoSh. So we're going to click on that link right there. To use the shell, you must connect to MongoDB Atlas. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to connect to Atlas. Now, I have an Atlas account, but I want you to go ahead and, again, go onto Atlas and try it for free and register an account. For your company, put rank in technical college and go ahead and create an Atlas account. And then verify your account. Uh, I'm sure they're going to send you a account verification email. So go ahead and create an Atlas account. And at the same time, let's download the download center. So this is install from an MSI. That's going to be my preference. And we're going to click on download Mongo Shell version 1.9. Click on save. Let that finish downloading. There we go. And of course I'll extract. Now this is going into my downloads. And it should pop up in the folder. It did not, so let me manually open the Mongo. So this is the zipped and this is the unzipped folder. And click, and click all the way to get to the exe. And so you could run this here or you could run it at the terminal like we typically will. But if I open this, you could see basically this compass is a circle icon, and the Mongo shell prompt is basically the same thing as a square. And so if we just kind of hit enter here, that's going to get us in through the shell. So you got the GUI, you got the command prompt. Everything we're going to do is going to be through the command prompt. Turns out that the commands that you execute at the command prompt are very similar to the code that you'll write in JavaScript. So there's a whole lot of benefit to learning the commands through the shell. Again, because it's kind of going to be what we do when we write JavaScript uh, um, to work with databases, Mongo databases. So we're gonna get familiar with the command line commands, and then using the GUI is pretty simple. Once you know the commands, using the GUI is pretty easy. Um, Optionally, once you kind of boot this up, it would be nice to pin this as well. So if you boot this shell up and you hit enter, While that's open, you could just right click and pin to taskbar. So you now have these pinned, and you can open up the GUI or the shell just from clicking your taskbar. So that's cool. It's also worth noting if you kind of now go into your terminal and I can close down these JavaScript files, go into my terminal. I'll be writing a lot of my code from either one, doesn't really make a big difference. A command prompt is a command prompt. So now if I type in Mongo shell, it's not a recognized command, therefore my path, I need to update my path. I could fix this problem, but for now, let's just operate out of the CLI kind of built in here. For this path needs to be added. This full path needs to be added to your environment variable, your path environment variable, for it to recognize Mongo shell. Man, my laptop is being loud today. Okay, so Grant, you keeping up okay?
Yep, I'm with you.
Cool. Next up, let's log into Atlas, Mongo Atlas, not Atlas. And I'm gonna sign in. Now I already have an account. So let's see here, and maybe it makes sense for me to do this from scratch. So I'm going to try and authenticate with my GitHub. And authorize. Doesn't like that. So let's let me see. Let me check a password manager and see what account I've used in the past. Okay, so my credentials are with my work credentials. So let me log in. EA Gutmestead at Rankin. Paste my password. Click on the motorcycle. Remind me later. Okay, so I've been in here before. You have not. And so you can kind of see here up in this drop down, we have projects. Underneath here, we have organizations. And so let's click on view all organizations. Grant, do you have an organization?
Yeah, it's the same ranking.
Okay, so yours says Rankin Technical College.
Yes,
Okay,
it looks
great.
the same as yours.
Great. So that's kind of the first step, is you need to have an organization. The next thing is you need a project. So if I kind of go back to the home page, of Atlas. Do you have any projects?
There's project 0 listed, but I don't think anything's been done with it,
Okay.
and 0 deployments.
Okay. Cool. So um, let me walk through this with you. So what I want to do is get some sample data loaded in here, and there is a sample database that has a bunch of data in it about movies called MFlix. And so I'm going to click on New Project. I'm going to call this MFlix for the sample database. Click on Next. And we don't need to add any members right now. Let's create that project. Okay, so now MFlix MongoDB. So now we're going to get this sample data loaded in. So this MFlix database has um, these collections 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So to learn how to add the sample data in Atlas, see Load Sample Data. So we need to create a database deployment, and so that's kind of where we are. When you're on this database deployment right here, Grant, are you on this? Are you on this screen?
Yes.
Okay, let's click on Build a Database. And so the important thing here is we're going to make sure to select free, which is essentially, um, a shared environment. You can see here that you're sharing your virtual machine resources. And so what you're doing here is you're creating what's called a cluster, which is essentially three database servers, VMs, if you will. And we're going to put these on AWS. You got options though. You could go cloud or Azure. AWS, as we kind of saw, is kind of leading the pack. So we're going to choose free. We're going to choose AWS. Um, let's see, we got North Virginia. Sure, North Virginia. Call it cluster 0, and let's create. Create. Now select the appropriate tab. Let's go through the UI. In the left navigation pane in Atlas, click Database, and then open the Load Sample Dataset dialog. Okay, um, this is good. This is all changing. So you're going to need to do a couple things here. This is really good. This is all integrated now. This has changed. Um, So there's a couple of settings. Number one, you need to allow your IP address through the firewall. And so down here we'll do that. You also need to create essentially your admin user. Um, Username and password. Now I'm recording this. I'm going to pull this off the screen, change my password. Um, Username is EA Gudmestead. That is obviously being pulled from my account. What I'm just going to do is I'm going to change my password and copy it and make sure that I don't lose it. So I'm going to pull this off of here. Um, but before I do that, um, all these settings can change, by the way. So this is just the initial configuration, username and password. Let's click on Add My Current IP, and this is your public IP address. Um, Obviously, you can change this later on, but this is the public IP where I'm coming from. If you change like if you go work at Starbucks or if you go work at a different building, this IP address is likely to change. And in fact, I'll probably open this up a little bit more later on. We're gonna, for now, since we are just doing local, um, my local environment, um, this will work. And I'll change my password. Then I'm just gonna click on finish and close. So let me pull my credentials off and click this button to auto-generate secure password, copy, and then I'm going to click on the create user button. Okay, so now that I pull this back, um, you can see I have my user created. I'm going to save my credentials somewhere that I won't lose them. EA Gudmestead is my username, and this is for my MongoDB Atlas account. And finish and close. Now let's, congratulations, go to databases. And this is where we need to click on cluster 0. We want to get this mflix data loaded in. Let's see. In the left, click on database. So let's click on database. And where's my load sample data?
I'm sorry, quick question. I was saving my password. Did you do my local environment or cloud?
I did my local environment. Cloud, we can always change these settings later, by the way, but yeah, when you go to deploy this, obviously you're going to change that to cloud, and um, yeah.
And then
Yep.
click that.
So that's what you're doing now. Yeah, so Grant had a pop-up that said load sample data set. I didn't get a pop-up, but if I click this ellipsis button, there's my load sample data set, and it says, hey, sample data set 350 meg, let's load it. And that's going to spin for a minute to get that database in there. Okay, now it says sample dataset successfully loaded after it took a little bit of time. Access it in collections or by connecting with the MongoDB shell. So that's what we'll be doing next before we actually start running our first commands. Now, if I click on Browse Collections, we should be able to see our data. And it's more than sample mflix. There's sample Airbnb, sample analytics, geospatial, guides, but here's our mflix, and here's our, so this is our data, these are our collections, and then these are our documents, right? So here's a bunch of sample data, and like here's, for example, a bunch of movies that we can kind of work with, and we have labs built around this, by the way. So we'll be working with this um, um, sample data. And so you can see a bunch of sample movies, kind of the Great Train Robbery and whatever, The Land Before the Sunset. These are all just different dummy data for movies. Okay, now the the fun part is getting our Mongo shell to connect to our Atlas sample data. And it's always settings and configuration settings and going through all of that. I will point out, if you log in, I'll update this document because this was a working document, but it always changes. I have a MongoDB quick start guide on Inside Rankin. Um, so if you kind of go to the class, and here's our quick start guide. So we've already done a lot of this. We downloaded shell, we connected to the local server. We'll start running some commands here in a little bit, but we skipped over the commands and we're going to connect to a cluster. We already allowed our IP address. We already created an admin user. In fact, I want to double check that. If I go back, I'm going to go here, kind of back out of that. I'm going to check this user's permissions. All right, this has changed a little bit. Oh, these are my organization settings. I need to click on mflix. Okay, this is what I'm looking for. So I'm going to click on database access. This is my user. Read and write to any database. So that's good. That's what I wanted to see. This username EA Gudmestead. If I go to network access, here you could see the IP address that we added. So that's what I expected. Back to my quick start. Okay, so to connect to your cluster, so navigate to deployment databases and click on connect. And so I'm going to follow this step 7. This is basically where we are, connecting to your cluster. Navigate to deployment and then databases. So connect to your cluster. So let me back up. Click database here, deployment database. I'm going to click on connect. And then we're going to click on shell. And here it gives me a connection string into your application. Now we already have MongoSh downloaded. Add your MongoSh's download directory bin into your path variable. I talked about how to do that. We might need to do that yet. And then run this connection string. So I'm going to click on copy. I'm going to pop open my shell. And I'm just going to hit paste right here. And that didn't work. Let me hit enter first. So I'm going to hit enter to connect to localhost. Now I'm going to paste. Control V didn't work. Let me just right click on the mouse and that'll paste that prompt in. And missing semicolon, that's interesting. I don't think that's it. Okay. This is not. Yeah, so when I click this, it's already running my Mongo shell prompt. So, okay, not a problem. Let's back up. Add your directory / bin to your path variable. So we're going to do step 2 here. The first step in doing step 2 is finding that bin directory, right? So mine is in my downloads, right? This is my extracted, like I downloaded MongoSh, which is a zip folder. I then extracted it, right, to a folder. So this is an unzipped folder. I click, 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 and this is where my executable is. So I need this path right here, right? I'm going to copy this path. That's kind of step one. Next thing we need to do is on our system environment variables. If I type in this PC and I click properties, this is something we've done once before in this class. I'm going to click on advanced system settings. I'm going to click on environment variables then. And I'm going to find system variables for path. So right here, I'm going to click on edit. I'm going to say new. I'm going to paste in that path, and I'm going to add a backslash at the very end. Okay, so it basically tells your command prompt how to get to that MongoSh executable. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to click OK. And then close. Now check this out. If I go to a command prompt, CMD, I type in path, you should see that in there. And I would expect that to be the last one. If I type in MongoSh, okay, it's now a recognized command, so I know it's in there somewhere. I'm going to click Control C, but if you type in MongoSh and it does that, you know it's working, which is cool. So that's step two on this piece right here. Now it says run your connection string in your command line. So now that it recognizes MongoSh, we need to tell it to connect with this username. So let's pop that into my command prompt. I'm gonna exit. Okay, so this is just at my CLS to clear screen. Okay, if I right click on my mouse, it pastes that in. I'm gonna hit enter. And now it needs my super secure password. And again, I copied that to my clipboard. I right click, it'll paste it, and it says connecting, and we're in. We're now on our Atlas cluster with our, if I click on show DBs, you can see all of our sample databases. And this is, this is where I want to be before we start writing some commands. How are we doing, Grant?
I managed to get there too.
Beautiful. I'm going to save these credentials to my MongoSh creds. I'm going to save this somewhere so that I can have it on a different computer when I get rid of this laptop. There's my credentials. Super secure. Okay, so that's installing the Mongo tools. That's connecting to an Atlas cluster through the command prompt. That's where we need to be. I'll stop this video here.